The plot thickens. Welcome to The Big Puzzle. In this podcast, we explore the subtle connections between science, religion, politics, economics, and history. One piece at a time, we unveil the big picture of this shared experience that we call life. So, what is the plot? Let's talk a little about the historical context of Zeniff and his people. So to do that, I want to use a little timeline that I created. So let me show it to you. This shows kind of the whole story, but we're going to just focus on the first part today. And we usually simplify the whole history of the Nephites and the Lamanites. The Nephites are the good guys, the Lamanites are the bad guys, except at some point. But then we also know that, at some point the Mulekites appear, and we also have the Jaredites. So let's try to put everything in context around the story of Zeniff. So, like I said, let's move to this side. Okay, initially let's start here, where the book actually starts. We have the family of Lehi. They leave Jerusalem. They go through the desert. They go through the sea, and eventually they reach their promised land. And that is important. So that the idea of the promised land, that would be important in everything that we're going to be talking about. Lehi and Sariah, they both die, and tension between the families of the brothers escalate to a point in which they cannot live together anymore. So the Nephites decide to leave. That's what pretty much everybody knows. And we know that they start having fights. Now, were the Nephites the good guys? Well, yes, in general, but that doesn't mean that they were perfect. They had to be, admonished and rebuked many times. So we know a lot about that. We don't know much about what happened with the Lamanites because they didn't keep any records that we know of. But we know about the Nephites and how easy it was for them, to lose sight of what they were doing. So here we have, the split, and we have the Lamanites remaining in what we call the land of Lehi Nephi, their inheritance land, and they move into the wilderness. At some point, we learn that a prophet there that was called Mosiah, he has some revelation that people should follow him more into the wilderness. They had to leave the body of the Nephites. And let's go to the scriptures. So this would be in the book of Omni in the verse 12. This is Amalekite who is writing the last of this series of writers, starting from Nephi, Jacob, Enos, and so on. And he's talking about, he says, "Behold, I will speak unto you somewhat concerning Mosiah, who was made king over the land of Zarahemla." And we're going to see how that happened. "For behold, he being warned of the Lord that he should flee out of the land of Nephi," right? So they were kind of still close to the Lamanites, "and as many as would hearken unto the voice of the Lord should also depart out of the land with him into the wilderness. And some people follow him." So that's interesting. We have a big chunk of the original Nephites that didn't follow Mosiah. What happened to them? We don't know. So that is this question mark here. But we know that the people who were keeping the records, in this case Amalekite, they decided to follow Mosiah. So we can see that these were righteous people who left. And they went into the wilderness, so living their, promised land. At some point, they meet some other people who are living there, right? In a land that they call the land of Zarahemla. And the leader of these people was a man called Zarahemla. And it says that they were numerous. But it also says that they have had a lot of wars among themselves, and a lot of conflicts, and that they had lost their language. But they remembered that they came from Jerusalem as well. They left Jerusalem a little later than the Lehites. And we don't know exactly who came first, but what we know is that, they left later. And they were led by one of the sons of King Zedekiah, and that was Mulek. So that's why we have the Mulekites that, came here. But they also had an interesting story, because when they arrived to their promised land, and we don't know how, they met one single person that they couldn't understand, that was Coriantumr. And we do know about who Coriantumr was. And Coriantumr was the last of the Jaredites. We won't go into the whole story of the Jaredites, but they were a big people that they left, during the Tower of Babel confusion, and several families, also were promised a promised land, and they came here, but started getting wars and killing each other until they reached the point that did actually kill each other. And Coriantumr was told by Ether, and previously by other prophets, that the land, their promised land, would be given to some other people. And Coriantumr just survived enough for witnessing that prophecy. He rejected the prophecy. He tried to kill Ether, but he ended up, his people and his enemies' people, that was Shith, they killed each other until only the two kings survived, and they finally Coriantumr killed Shith, and he was left alone in the land. At that time, he met the Mulekites, who were granted that land, which is an interesting thing. Sometimes we think about a promised land, and we think the promised land is a guaranteed promise, and it is not. It's conditional, right? So you only get the promised land if you and this applies to all the promises from the Lord. They're only valid if you do your part, right? That doesn't mean that are not promised. The Lord says that He will honor His part, but we need to do our part. So we get to these two different people getting together. But like I said, so the Mulekites had lost their language, so it was hard for them to understand each other. At some point, Mosiah made sure that they would learn the language, and this also brings light to one important aspect. When Lehi sent his sons to retrieve the brass plates, it was not only for them to keep their knowledge of religions, of the doctrine, but also to keep their language. So written language remains way longer than spoken language. That's why they could revive the Hebrew, because there was a lot of written Hebrew, and they kind of were able to rebuild it after it was pretty much lost. So Lehi was right. It was very, very important for them to take those records, but the Mulekites did not. And we can see that in a few years, well, few decades, they had completely lost all knowledge. Now happens something that is kind of interesting. That is that they make Mosiah to be their king. But we know that the Mulekites were numerous, and we know that they had a leader, Zarahemla. So what happened there? I don't know. I've seen enough of this world to know that usually people don't agree to be led by other people. So were the Mulekites happy with the arrangements? Were they in such a bad shape that they decided that, yeah, we'd rather follow these guys who just arrived? Were there any ideas of, hey, guys, this is our promised land. Why should you be our ruler? And we will see that the transition was not easy. Sometimes we think that, oh, kumbaya, everybody got together, Mosiah, you be our king. Well, it was not like that. And especially because of something that happened after they make, Mosiah their king, and eventually Mosiah gives the kingdom to his son Benjamin. And at that point we learn that the Lamanites found them. We don't have any, record that the Lamanites had any fights with the Mulekites. So maybe this wilderness was, enough of a separation between the two lands that why would the Lamanites try to go there? But they were probably trying to get to the Nephites. And that might be, this question mark, the answer to this question mark. It's pretty clear that, according to what Mosiah prophesied, they had to leave. So these Nephites probably either joined the Lamanites or were destroyed by the Lamanites. So we don't see them anymore. But eventually the Lamanites come and they start attacking the people, the new Nephites, so the unified Mulekites and Nephites. And well, we're getting close to Zeniff and what was his role on all of this. But let me see. So in Omni 124 says, this is Amalekite writing, starting on the 23, and he said, I, Amalekite, was born in the days of Mosiah, and I have lived to see his death, and Benjamin his son reigneth in his stead. And behold, I have seen in the days of King Benjamin a serious war and much bloodshed between the Nephites and the Lamanites. But behold, the Nephites did obtain much advantage over them, yes, insomuch that King Benjamin did drive them out of the land of Zarahemla. So, yeah, they were successful in rejecting the Lamanites, but that was not the end of the problem. And now we need to think that this Benjamin is the famous King Benjamin that gave this awesome talk a few years later, and the son of the father of the second Messiah, who was the last king who implemented the new type of government. These were righteous people, right? They were not wicked people. And why am I saying this? Because the next part is where we are introduced to Zeniff and what was his role. So we have two different accounts that I think that we misunderstood. The first one is again by Amalekite, and in Omni 27 he says, and now I would speak somewhat concerning a certain number who went up into the wilderness to return to the land of Nephi, for there was a large number who were desirous to possess the land of their inheritance. So this is interesting. The reason that Amalekite says that these people went to, the wilderness and trying to go to the land of Lehi Nephi is because they were desirous to possess the land of their inheritance. And 28, wherefore they went up into the wilderness, and their leader, being a strong and mighty man, and a stiff-necked man, wherefore he caused a contention among them, and they were all slain, say 50 in the wilderness, and they returned again to the land of Zarahemla. So they went to the land, they had a fight, their leader was mighty, strong, mighty, stiff-necked, and caused a contention. So their leader caused a contention that killed everybody except 50. They came back, they convinced other people to go with them, and a bunch of people went back, right? So this is the process that we see here. Bunch of people go in there to inherit their land. They had a fight among themselves because of their leader. A few come back, convince other ones, and they go back. And eventually we see the name of Zeniff as a king, but Zeniff was part of this. Now, the other account that we have about this is by Zeniff himself. And this is in Mosiah 9, where we start reading his records. These were written about 34 years later than the events were happening. Maybe a little more, maybe 36, 38. And it's from a Zeniff that has been through a lot. So let's keep that in mind. But let's see what Zeniff version of the story is. In Mosiah 9, verse 1, it says, I, Zeniff, having been taught in all the language of the Nephites, and having had a knowledge of the land of Nephi, or of the land of our father's first inheritance, so he was very interested in that idea of their land, and having been sent as a spy among the Lamanites, that I might spy out their forces, that our army might come upon them and destroy them. But when I saw that which was good among them, I was desirous that they should not be destroyed. Okay, a few things. He was sent as a spy, right? That I might spy. Who was the leader? Who was the strong man? Well, Zeniff mentions something. He said, therefore I contended with my brethren in the wilderness, for I would that our ruler should make a treaty with them. But he, being an austere and bloodthirsty man, commanded that I should be slain. But I was rescued by the shedding of much blood, for father fought against father, and brother against brother, until the greater number of our army was destroyed in the wilderness, and we returned, those of us that were spared, to the land of Zarahemla, to relate that tale to their wives and their children. And I said, and yet I, being overzealous to inherit the land of our fathers, collected as many as were desired to go, and so on. We will leave this for the next one, so what happens after that. But what I want to propose is that great stiff-necked man was not this ruler, right? But I think it was Zeniff. So what Amalekite is talking is about Zeniff. Zeniff is the one who produced the problem. And again, Zeniff tried to say, I was sent as a spy, to kill the Lamanites, but I'm so good that I saw the good in them. Let's see how he changes, his point of view very soon. But, I'm so good, I'm so virtuous, and they were so evil, and, they wanted to destroy them. That's the problem we're trying to understand here. Right? Zeniff was, in today's terms, we would say he was woke. He was very eager to see the good in other people and see the bad in his own people. Obviously, the Lamanites were not completely evil. They had families. They had, they had friends. They were people. They had terrible, ideas, and they were really eager to destroy the Nephites. They hated the Nephites, but Zeniff decided to side with the Lamanites because what I proposed in the previous video, he was learned, he was superior to the Nephites, he could see all the evil in the Nephites, and they had abandoned their land, and he was going to go back, and he was going to, and it's contradictory because you cannot go and take your inheritance land that was actually used by other people. So the Lamanites were not going to go away. Well, they made some room for them, and we will see why. If you know the story, you already know what happened. But again, Zeniff is not an empathetic, nice guy who was really trying to see the good in other people. And this is his story. We should take it with abominable flats of sand, of salt, right? So I'm not sure how trustworthy we should do. And yeah, we can see kind of a forced transformation. But again, I don't want to spoil the next chapter here. But he still kept making bad decisions to the end of his life. And the last decision that he made brought a lot of suffering on a lot of people. So it's not what some people, in Sunday school classes, oh, Zeniff, so well-intentioned and so good. I don't think he was at all. I think he hated his own people. He felt he was superior to it. He wanted to be a king. He wanted to inherit the land. Maybe, all these discussions that were going back in the land of Zarahemla about the inheritance, and maybe, he hated the Mulekites and he didn't want to be with them. We don't know. What we do know, kind of that explains this, and I think that it helps with the understanding of the history, is what Mormon wrote in this, connecting chapter that is the Words of Mormon. In the verse 12, and now concerning this King Benjamin, he had somewhat of contention among his own people. So, like we see, things were not easy for Benjamin at home. And it came to pass also that the armies of the Lamanites came down out of the land of Nephi to battle against his people. Well, we already read about that. And in the 15th says, and it came to pass that after they had been false Christ, and their mouths had been shut, and they punish according to their crimes. And after they had been false prophets and false preachers and teachers among the people, and all these having been punished according to their crimes, and after they having been much contention and many dissensions away unto the Lamanites, behold, it came to pass that King Benjamin, with the assistance of the holy prophets who were among his people, and so on. He ends up saying that laboring with all his mind and his body and the faculty of his whole soul, he and also the prophets did once more establish peace in the land. But what about these dissensions away unto the Lamanites? I think that Zeniff was one of those dissenters, was one of the troublemakers, was one of the ones who were creating a bad situation for the Nephites. They were already struggling, like I was saying, they had some issues. They were integrating with another people, with a different language, with, trying to figure it out. Now they have the Lamanites coming, finding them, attacking them. Were they sent as spies? I don't know. Really, I don't think I can trust anything that, Zeniff is saying. Yeah, maybe historically, but I have to apply the correct lens to see what he's saying. He said that he was sent as a spy, and they wanted to attack the Lamanites and kill them. How many people were there? Is it really something that happened? Because according to Amalekite, he mentions a group of people who wanted to go and inherit the land, right? So who was this? Who was the stubborn, the stiff-necked, the mighty man? Was the one that said that they should kill Zeniff, or was Zeniff himself, and he's kind of changing the story to fit his narrative? I don't know. And if there were spies and they were probably sent by King Benjamin. Maybe it was a way to protect themselves. I don't know. I don't have enough context. What I do know is that if that's the case, that they were sent by King Benjamin as spies to fight, or to find how to fight or how to defend from the Lamanites, that was a righteous thing, because I know that King Benjamin was righteous. So that doesn't match, the Zeniff narrative. Okay, but this is just the beginning, the introduction of Zeniff into the story. A person who felt superior, that used other people for his purposes. He was not compassionate. He was just using this empathy, narrative to justify his hatred. He was willing to kill his brothers in the desert. He was willing to risk people, and just to fulfill his desires, to be a king, to inherit the land that he deserved, this entitlement, and again, we only have his side of the story, and we need to be careful how we read it. Okay, I think this has been long enough. I hope you found it interesting. I would invite you to go and reread some of the things. I skipped through a lot of interesting stuff. I think that the next one, when we cover what happened afterwards, will also be interesting. So I invite you to join me in the next one. So that will be it for this one. Thank you for coming, and see you in the next one. Bye.